All right, world studies, we got to finish the Cold War. So ironic that we're going to finish off that last of our notes together for this entire school year with me on video. But that is the reality we're in. Oh well. So I believe that actually where we had just finished up together in these notes, yes, was me telling you about my contributions to the Cold War back in 1984. I tell you, sometimes I still think I'm trying to work off some of those Big Macs to this very day. Anyhow, that was my doing my bit. All right, for I don't know, for freedom and USA and yeah, all that. All right, so we talked about Mikhail Gorbachev, this new leader in the Soviet Union who comes in, a number of years after Reagan kind of restarts the Cold War once he becomes president. And Gorbachev comes in, as I was telling you guys, with this mission to try to rescue the Soviet Union. Major financial problems. The country is really starting to struggle. This process starts in the late 60s, going into the 70s, and by the mid 80s, it is really having problems. And so Gorbachev comes in with two ideas, and both of them Russian words. Get some Russian, although we're going to put them in English because the Cyrillic language of Russia would be a little hard for us to figure out. Perestroika is that first term you are looking at there for number one. And pretty much is a word that describes what I have written there for you. And it pretty much was trying to tinker with, kind of like you see, old Gorby over there on the right side, kind of under the hood of the car. Trying to kind of make some little adjustments here and there to try to get the Soviet economy working a little better, a little more smoothly. Even taking a look at the way that the government is structured to see if maybe that was where some of the problems were coming from. Gorbachev is pretty much shaking an attitude of, hey, we gotta try anything here to get our country going in the right direction, or who knows what the future is going to bring. Another change is the term glasnost. Okay, and that one you've got defined for you right there. And while I talk about openness with the West, really it was just kind of the glasnost. Pretty much does just translate into openness. And the Soviet Union had always been very, very closed off and protective, and didn't want that evil rock and roll music or movies from Hollywood poisoning the minds of good Soviet citizens. And Gorbachev now pretty much says, we've got nothing to fear from that. If our country is so weak that, by kids listening to a little bit of, I don't know, kind of like to see over there on the left side, some Beatles or, something like that. If that's all it's going to take to bring us down, then we probably didn't have that much to start with anyway. And so he says, forget about it. If you want to listen to your rock and roll, you want to watch Hollywood movies, you want to read books that are published in the West, have at it. And so a lot of those prohibitions that had been in place for years are finally lifted. And the people of the Soviet Union suddenly have access to more information than they've had in the past, which also kind of informs them a little bit more about kind of what's been going on in the outside world while they've been, living in Soviet land. Number three is going to end up being a big one, okay? And this is something that Gorbachev begins to do after he's been in power for a couple of years. And as he's using perestroika to try to, like we've talked about, tinker with the Soviet economy, he realizes that really one of the bigger things that's dragging down the Soviet economy is the fact that the Soviet Union still supports all of these Eastern European countries, those countries that form that shield, that buffer that we talked about way back, right after World War II ends. On the map here, there you got the big old Soviet Union, and all these Eastern European countries are all pretty much just propped up by the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union pours a lot of money into them to make sure that their communist governments are operating well and that sort of thing. And so Gorbachev makes the announcement that the Soviet Union is no longer going to basically directly support these countries, pretty much saying, we are pulling out and you are going to be on your own. And so all of the help and support that you've grown to be accustomed to coming from the Soviet Union is gone, because we need to focus on taking care of ourselves, and you guys should probably do the same. Okay, and that is a decision that Gorbachev makes that is going to end up having some pretty dramatic consequences, which we'll get to very quickly here. All right, because that will bring us up to the year 1989, and this is the year that things are really going to start to unravel. It's technically the year some people say the Cold War ends. Let's talk about this. First of all, a bunch of those Eastern European countries who now have the Soviet Union pulling out all their help and support say that, if they're gone, then why do we even need to still even have a communist government? In most of those countries, the citizens of those countries had never been happy with the communist government. Remember, the communists, had freed them from the Nazis, but then they had never left. And so this is their chance to finally, like 40 years later, gain some freedom. And so one by one, you see all these countries have these revolutions. Some of them are peaceful. Some of them have a little bit of violence. None of them are too crazy. But one by one, the communist governments of Eastern Europe fall. And in their place are various kind of forms of more democratic type governments with free elections and, the things that we kind of expect in a free country like, like ours. Okay. The other thing that happens in 1989, also in large part because the Soviet Union is pulling support, is the Berlin Wall is officially, I was to say ended. How do you end a wall? It comes down piece by piece, section by section. It had been about a year or so before that Ronald Reagan had gone to Berlin and had given a speech and had very famously basically dared Gorbachev to, tear down this wall. And well, just like with, what we're talking about with number one there, with the withdrawal of Soviet support, the people of East Berlin no longer see a need for this wall. And so in November of 1989, basically they open it up and they allow people to come through the wall from the east to the west. And that's the beginning of the end. In the days, weeks, and months after that, most major sections of the Berlin Wall are demolished and brought down. The picture you see over there was in the early days of this, where you have a lot of people just kind of taking out their anger. But later on, it'd be bulldozers and the major equipment taking it down. The year after the Berlin Wall comes down, you've got the rest of the story there. East and West Germany becomes just what you're used to, Germany, okay? Becomes one country again, and the same political situation it is here in 2023. So the end of all of that, okay? And the only thing left standing, really, for the larger part of that afterwards is just the good old Soviet Union itself. And but time is knocking, and in 1990 and 91, we're going to see this unravel, and the fall of communism in the Soviet Union and the return of Russia. It starts with what has already been going on, and that is this weakening of Soviet government power. Gorbachev does some of it intentionally, again, to try to fix the economy, try to, kind of save the country. But now with all of those Eastern European countries now all declaring independence, with the Soviet people getting more of a kind of taste of some freedom, it weakens even further. And it begins to become very clear that something is about to change in the way that the Soviet government operates, whether the government itself is going to officially abandon communism, whether they're going to maybe weaken communism and try to bring in other governing types of philosophies or ideologies. What happens is that the Soviet military panics. They think that that the leaders of the Soviet Union are about to pull the plug on the country. And so the leaders of the military turn out in Moscow and other major cities to try to attempt what we call a coup, basically kind of like a little mini revolt. And in this case, the military to take over the government of the Soviet Union so that they can ensure that communism is going to continue. It's going to survive. The Russian people turn out by the tens and hundreds of thousands to fight back. Hold on just a sec here. Sorry, had a big cough. I had to get out of my way there. But the people turn out to push back on this military coup. and Russian people out in the streets, basically daring, the soldiers in the tanks, like you see pictured over there on the right side, to open fire on the crowd. And in the end, the soldiers won't. And in most cases, the soldiers end up joining the protesters. The coup completely falls apart, and like it says there, comes to an end. And that pretty much does bring us to the end of the Soviet Union. On Christmas Day of 1991, Gorbachev officially, the fancy word we use is dissolves the Soviet Union. In other words, all these of the little republics and other parts that had belonged to the Soviet Union are now told you can stay with us if you want, or you can declare your independence and do your own thing. It's at that time that many, many, many of these little republics break away from Russia, including Ukraine, okay, which kind of connects us back to, the here and now and the conflict going on as Russia is now trying to, reclaim Ukraine and add it back to Russia. But the Soviet Union is gone. The Russian Federation is declared, and that is how it operates to this very day. In the end, when we talk about what ends the Cold War, some historians say it was just the economic problems of the Soviet Union became so great that they could not be surmounted. And that is why it didn't survive. Other people give Ronald Reagan some credit that he put even additional pressure on the Soviet Union to try to compete with the United States when they could no longer afford to do so, and that might have rushed the end of the Soviet Union to come to an end faster than it otherwise might have. Lots of different theories there that what ends it. And I mean, one thing that seems clear is, for 40 years, it had been the Soviet Union against the United States of America. And after Christmas of 1991, there's still a United States of America, but there's no longer a Soviet Union. So as far as who won the Cold War, the answer to that is kind of obvious, okay? Just about as obvious as Rocky delivering that knockout punch there to the Soviet boxer in Rocky IV. If you have not seen Rocky IV, doggone it, you find that out there. It's got to be, I don't know, Netflix or Amazon or Hulu, or find it. It's a fine, fine movie, a good Cold War classic, along with other movies like, I don't know, Red Dawn and War Games, stuff like that. There's a lot of good ones out there. A lot of historians also nowadays, and people in the media, on social media and all that, also talk about, is the Cold War really over? Or is there a new Cold War starting? The fact that, the United States is sending weapons and military equipment to Ukraine to fight against Russia. It sounds a lot like, when we had countries sending help, to, countries in Asia that were fighting against each other over communism. But now it's over, Russian political power and the idea that Russia wants to grow in size and wants to add back some of these territories that they lost when the Soviet Union came to an end. That's a big question mark, and we don't know for sure, oops, sorry about that. We don't know for sure how it's going to come to an end, but we certainly know that Vladimir Putin, the leader of the Soviet Union, definitely has something to say about all of this, and I think only the future is gonna let us know how it's gonna play out, whether we really are in a new Cold War. Anyhow, Vladimir there is telling you that even though the Cold War is maybe starting up again, your notes for Unit 9 are at an end. Okay, that is it. That is it. Yes, the end of your notes in Russian for you right there. Okay. And that wraps it up, folks. That wraps up Unit 9. That wraps up your entire year of World Studies. Woo! And we got it all taken care of here in less than 15 minutes. All right, you need to shut this down and go ahead and shift it on over. I want you guys getting to work on your projects, okay? I saw a lot of good progress being made when I was with you on Tuesday. Keep that going so that when we get to back together, when I'm back with you again on Monday, I can already know that a lot of you are finished or very close to being finished. All right, but that'll wrap you up in the notes for now. You got it, and I will see you soon. Bye.